Hello, everybody, and welcome to the weekly reroll for the week of December 29, 2014. This will be the last weekly reroll of 2014 because New Year's is coming in 2 days. So, sorry about the late start time, guys. I got up a little bit later than I expected today. And without further ado, let's hop into Roleplay Solem. If you do not want spoilers for Roleplay Solem, you should mute the VOD until the overlay disappears. Roleplay Solemn, Season 3, Episode 1. Yes, that's right. We reboot Roleplay Solemn. Um, and let's just jump right into what happened in the reboot. We have new characters, and we have a new addition. We're playing 5e. Jeff is playing Karn the Destroyer. JP is playing Amos. Jen is playing Monsieur Varnouche still, but it's a different Monsieur Varnouche. I mean, it's still a gnome, still has a raccoon, he's still a wizard, but it's a different Monsieur Varnouche. And Ryan is playing Dante. So, the party is set in a very different section of Solemn. They're set in the northwest corner, kind of like the Seattle region of Solemn, except it's not quite as rainy and whatnot. And the party is broke as balls. They start in a bar, kind of looking for some work. And eventually a guy comes along, is like, hey, I need some adventurers, I need some mercenaries, I need some people that can defend me on the road because this shit is whack. And the party's like, all right, they negotiate a price with him and head off with him. And they kind of, there's some weird things about him. He's got a kid in the back of his cart who's not really a kid, he's like a young adult. 18, 19, something like that, but he's really quiet, doesn't do anything, just kind of looks down. The guy running the cart, not running the cart, but who owns the cart, whose name is Classico, totally different from the pasta, by the way, says the boy is simple and should be ignored. JP's character, whose name is Amos, notices that there's a lot of jade, like big jade stones in the back of the cart. And kind of pieces together that, you know what? For the amount that he's paying me, he's certainly got some valuable stones here. And they kind of go from town to town. I think they actually only make it one town over. But before they actually even leave town, the Classico gets ambushed by a bunch of thugs. And he, has the party go fight them for him. Party dispatches the thugs pretty easily, and the party moves on. They get to the next town, and Classico sells one of his jade stones and tries to sell another. But it doesn't really work out too well. And finally, things kind of come to a head. JP confronts Classico, being, hey, the jade there back there is worth a lot. You should be paying us more. And Classico's like, no, this is all I can afford to pay you. And JP's like, dude, you got to pay us more. Like, this is really valuable shit you can afford to. And if it's this valuable, we're going to be risking our lives a lot more than I thought. Pay up. And the guy's like, all right, let's be honest. That's not jade. Those are pieces of glass that look like jade. Don't tell anyone. I'm selling them as if they were jade for some money, if you see what I'm saying. And JP's like, oh, okay. Yeah, we're out of here. Fuck you. And GTFOs. The rest of the party goes with him, and Classico gets pissed off and hires some more mercenaries. And as the party is departing, JP runs over, tells the other mercenaries exactly what's up, and the other mercenaries depart. One of them, who's a cleric of Astaire, kind of gives JP some thanks, gives him the blessing of Astaire, and then departs. The party heads back to the first town they met, and they're still kind of broke. They don't have a lot of money. They got some extra money because JP took 10 gold from Classico, the profits of the previous, what do you call it? Jade sale, and then they leave. They get back to the town they initially were, and they come across, as they're just hanging out in the bar again, just waiting for something to happen. A dude comes by, kind of a big, mean, battle-scarred veteran sort of guy. And he goes up to JP and is like, hey, you and I, we have business outside, And JP's like, ugh, Jeff, whose name is Karn the Destroyer, go deal with him. And Karn's like, all right, fine. I'll fight you first, and then we'll go get the 10 gold that is on the other guy. So they head outside, and a small crowd starts to gather. The whole party goes out to watch it, and JP starts taking bets, all right, who wants money on this guy? Who wants money on that guy? And Karn and this bandit, this mercenary, this assassin, this whatever, I don't know what you want to call him, but this dude start fighting. And it looks like Karn's getting his ass kicked. And everyone's giving them like a clear berth, and there's a whole bunch of bets on it, but everyone's like aware that the battle is supposed to be between this dude and Almost, but Almost like has his champion go up and fight for him instead. So after the battle gets a little underway, Almost like, shit, I'm gonna go in there and help, and hops in the battle and starts fighting as well. And there's an uproar from the crowd, but because there's a lot of bets on this, there's been a bunch of money put on this, and instead people kind of grumble and agree that, well, it is his fight. He did pick a champion. I remember grumble, 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 but they let it be. No one really wants to get inside and intervene, especially because JP's character has all the money. So what are they going to do? Like drag him out of the fight and ask for their money back? It doesn't make much sense. So they let it go. Jeff gets knocked down. Ryan joins the fray by trying to cast some spells at him, and pretty soon gets like thronged by people. Not thronged by people, but people get pissed off at him for intervening in the fight, and it's really obvious when he does because he's a warlock, so he starts like casting spells into the battle. But it turns out this guy beats the shit out of Karn, beats the shit out of Almost. They both like fall down and are at 0 HP, and then goes and beats the shit out of Ryan's character, Dante. Jen's character, Monsieur Varnouch, the entire time this fight is going on, is inside the bar, like trying to negotiate and talk with the innkeeper who's trying to watch the fight through the window of the bar. But basically, like, Jeff fights the guy, almost dies, JP joins the battle, Jeff goes down. JP goes almost all the way down, Ryan joins the fight, JP goes down. And then Ryan just, like, drops as well. So this guy solos all three of them, but they don't, like, all three engage at the same time. They kind of engage in different waves, and he wrecks them all. Jen's character comes out after everyone's been knocked out and is on the ground, like, bleeding to death, and goes around like, I'm going to patch him up, I'm going to patch him up. And the guy's like, fine, you can patch him up, I don't care. And goes and takes all of the money off of everyone except for Jen and leaves town. And the party eventually, like, wakes up an hour later or half an hour later and goes, oh my god, what the fuck happened? Oh shit. And everyone's like, well, what's going on? It's pretty obvious by the things the guy said that he was maybe not sent here by Classico, but at least Classico let him know that JP, who is like a halfling rogue, that there's this halfling who's in the town over, who's got a bunch of money that's not necessarily his. I don't know, maybe he's working for Classico, maybe he just overheard Classico, maybe Classico just told him so that he could go get revenge. No one's really sure why he came over here and like attacked the party, but it was very clear from the onset that he knew the party had money that wasn't necessarily theirs, and he was willing to fight him for it. But in the end, no one died. Like, he knocks them out. He doesn't try and kill them. He's after their money. He's not after their lives. Jen patches them up, and the party's like, okay, well, let's get out of here. They eventually meet up with, I think it was a dwarf, and they're going to travel with this dwarf to this other town pretty far away and hope that no one attacks them on the road because they have like 0 HP. And I think that is where we leave off with Roleplay Solem, if I'm not too terribly mistaken. So that's it for Roleplay Solem. Let's take a look at Dicing with Death. If you want to avoid Dicing with Death spoilers, now's your time to mute. Dicing with Death Season 6, Episodes 1 and 2. What the hell? That's right, we have retired Qualnir. Not necessarily forever, just for the time being, because Qualnir got a little out of hand. He just wouldn't die. This time, I'm the DM, Ryan's the player. We have Fenric as his character. And what does Fenric like to do? Fenric is a wizard. That's right, he's a solo wizard. And he starts in this town called Marmon in just south of the Devouring Marsh? Yeah, the Devouring Marsh. And he's coming to go meet a dude about a book, a spell book. And he goes to meet up with this guy, and he's not there, and he starts asking around, and he meets this kid whose name is G-Tech, and G-Tech's like, oh yeah, he's gone like missing in the sewers. No one's seen him since, and Ryan's character's like, all right, well, I'm going to go find this guy in the sewers, and goes down with his lantern and starts poking around the sewers. He doesn't see anything except for like this lizard man, this big ass, like burly lizard man, like way more burly and bigger than any of the lizard men he's ever seen before. He uses his sleep spell to knock it out and decides to get out of there. He did find Classico's body, though, but there's nothing on him. So he goes back to the bar where he found G-Tech, grabs G-Tech, and comes back down. There's a bunch of dialogue, and it's all very cool and very, very interesting. But I'm just kind of giving you the big points in case you want to skip the first episode, which I really recommend you don't, because the first and second episodes are amazing. Anyway, the two of them head down into the sewers and start poking around. They find some more lizard men. They find this, like, the sewers have the water stopped running through them because there's this little dam thingy that has been built up. Anyway, they fight some guys. Ryan grabs a book that was kind of stuck in this little dam, and they leave. They leave with the lizard man chasing them, but the lizard men are slow on land, and the party's not. And eventually, the party escapes. They get back to the surface. G-Tech is pretty badly wounded. Ryan's okay. Fenric is okay because, he's a wizard. He stays in the back lines. I think he took a little bit of damage. And and then Ryan's like, "Oh, the book, finally!" and like opens the book, and it's not the book he's looking for. So he's like, "All right, I need to find a new person to go down there with me." And he looks around. And he talks to the dude who runs the bar that they're hanging out. The guy's name is Daigon, and he's like clearly a battle scarred veteran. He looks like, level 10 adventurer who's decided to like settle down and start a bar. And there's a whole bunch of adventurers that like hang out at the bar. This is kind of like the adventurer's bar. And he's like, all right, what about this dwarf? And he gives he gives the dwarf Ryan's character's name, and they meet up. And the dwarf goes down with Ryan, with Fenric, and they head back into the sewers, and they poke around. They find a different section of the sewers, and a whole bunch of lizard men come out. And Fenric like casts like grease all over the area, and then lights it on fire, and then throws an extra thing of oil in there, and the dwarf gets slightly burned, but a couple lizard men get burned up, and he also like turns this wheel down in the sewer somewhere, which opens up another port of water. So now the sewers have lots of water running through them, but still no book. And with like part of the sewers on fire and lizard men after them, the two of them decide to just go back to the surface. Fenric's like, screw it, I can't find the book, I'm just gonna get out of here. But I did find this other book. It's a history, like it's a history of the kings of Valis, kind of written in an interesting way. And he goes off to find a place to sell it. There was also this thing with G-Tech's sister, whose name is Cookie, who was dating the guy that Ryan was supposed to find. And then Cookie seemed very interested in Fenric. Like, ooh, yes, why don't you take me to this other city away from all this place? And G-Tech gets really pissed off because it's his sister, and Fenric is hitting on her, or she's hitting on him, or something, I don't know. And then they leave. They head southward towards a very large city whose name I'm blanking on right now, but it's going to be brought back up in just a moment. But that's kind of where our first episode ends, is after they deal with everything in Marmon and decide to head south towards, here it is, Elmstead. So Ryan decides to head towards Elmstead. He doesn't bring Cookie with her because he forgot about her when he left. And we just go on the way. There's some minor adventures where he runs into a group of travelers, and then there's an orc blocking a bridge, and some such stuff. Here's where it gets interesting. So he gets to Linvort, and he runs into this dude who's trying to gather some people to go save his friends. And Ryan peeks up and is like, "What's going on?" He goes like, "Well, these goblins were guarding this bridge, and they took my friends captive, and blah blah blah, and they had a flaming sword." And Ryan's like, "Yes, I will go find your friends, regardless of this flaming sword." And goes with the kid, and he takes him right back to the bridge that the orc was guarding. And the orc is still guarding him. And Ryan's like, "Fuck it," and sets the bridge on fire. The orc goes up in flames. The bridge goes up in flames. And the kid's like, "Holy shit, I can't believe you did that." And rather than going all the way back to Linvort, which is a couple hours away, the two of them decide to like, well, let's see if we can find any tracks. Ryan crits his perception check, finds some tracks it back to this goblin cave, which is like an ice cave, which is really just kind of like a big spiral that goes deep into the earth, but it's like covered in ice and frost and stuff. Going down into the cave, they eventually come across some goblins who have a couple of prisoners, and a fight ensues, and the fight's really cool. And I should mention, the entire second episode, Ryan and I are moderately drunk, maybe ending on highly drunk, which is fun because we haven't done a drunken D&D session live before. So they do the cave, they kill the goblins in there, they rescue the other people. Ryan does find a sword that when he opens it, or takes out the sheath, sets on fire, and he gets like a chill through his body at it. He's like, "Ooh, my own flaming sword. Ooh." It's a short sword. And so they leave. They head back to Linvort, and then And then Ryan's like on his way back down to Elmstead. He's got to pass through Gilmheld first, but he spends a night out in the open plains. He wakes up in the middle of the night to one of the guys he rescued coming after his motherfucking sword. So he starts fighting with the guy and casts a spell, but it results in a wild surge, which results in a rust monster appearing and attacking the person who he was fighting with. So Ryan grabs a sword and starts to flee. The rust monster's meanwhile like busy with this other guy and with I think Ryan's lantern or something, because it's going after iron. So while the rust monster is busy, Ryan like runs over and like grabs his gear and just runs out. The rust monster doesn't chase him or can't catch him or something like that. It's dark, it's night, he doesn't have any light. The rust monster just doesn't show up behind him. And so he proceeds onward and eventually comes to Elmstead. There's some other minor adventures on the way, but not worth mentioning. What is worth mentioning that this is taking place during winter, and winter in Solem has no stars in the sky, except for like near dusk and dawn where you can see a few constellations, but no stars in the sky during winter, which makes it very, very dark. Eventually he gets to Elmstead, and this is where everything begins to get very blurry. As I mentioned, the heavy drinking or heavily drunk moments. He goes to try and sell the book, runs across a couple of abbots from a monastery who try and convince him to give them the book because it's valuable. And they annoy him enough that he's like, all right, just take the book. I don't want anything to do with you. And he runs into a couple of guys that seem going into a bar or an underground building. I don't really remember. There's some adventures in Elmstead, but they're pretty minor. I think it's just him like trying to sell his shit and trying to get himself settled and find something to do. But in the end, he like winds up not making any money. And we're gonna hope Ryan remembers better because we have Dyson with Death directly after the live broadcast of the weekly reroll. So we're gonna have Ryan recap the rest of that shit for us because at that point everything is just fuzzy for me. Neal fish memory Erickson anyway. I normally can't remember things. The alcohol on top of it made it very difficult to remember what happened. So it'll just kind of be a surprise. Next up on the docket is HonorBound, Redemption of the New Guard. So here we go, Season 1, Episode 18. We're in Valis. We are trying to... we had just stopped the we leave the execution site. Justin is sick, so he doesn't join us for the first hour. Ryan and I come back the next day to the execution site. We try and stop the execution. We successfully do so, but it gets dicey. Ryan almost goes down, but we manage to like finish off the guys that are there, and then proceed to head back to our secret base where we're talking to. His name's not Bonjour, it's the Bonjadi, something like that. And he's like, you guys got to go blow up this church. It's the only way to save the people. And we're like, what? We don't want to blow up a church. He's like, no, they're converting people to monsters in the church. This is the only way to do it. There's nothing else, like no other theoretical options that you can do. And I bitch like hell about railroading. But we go to the church. We kill the dudes in there who are like performing some ceremony to turn a person into a snake man. And then we blow up the church. Despite the fact that none of us want to blow up the church, for some reason we actually end up blowing up the church. I think Justin is the one who like pushes us to do it eventually. And then we escape into a part of the castle, and we're like walking around through the castle, and we come across this crazy ass woman who's got these servants, and she's beautiful and blah blah blah. And Thimble approaches her, being like, "Mistress, I want to help you and serve you here." And she like hands the woman, this dagger with a skull in the hilt. Kill the men with this. And the woman's like, well, yeah. And it turns into a fight. At the end of the fight, she turns invisible and flees. And Thimble chases after her and like leaps onto her, like, runs downstairs with a rapier in hand, runs into her but doesn't actually stab her, and then just like scrambles on top of her and climbs on top of her, and like she keeps trying to stab her while she's on the invisible creature. Because Thimble's tiny, she's a little bit. And this is like a big snake woman. Oh yeah, she transformed from a beautiful woman into a giant snake woman. Eventually, the party gathers around her and kills her, and we leave immediately because Justin has to go. He had a thing, and we were running really late. So that is HonorBound. We're now in the castle. We've kind of semi-started a revolution in the city of Valis, but it's not really clear how well that's working because it sounds like a lot of people. It sounds like everyone wants these snake people gone, but at the same time, everyone wants to make a profit by turning in any information to them. So everyone is supporting them, but hates them. And there's great many complaints about that from the party. But that's where we end off. And that is the end of HonorBound. Next up, we have the Misclicks D&D. Misclicks D&D, Season 3, Episode 18-ish. I think I'm going to mess up the number somewhere, but we're going to call it Episode 18. We see the return of the Red Fox. Party runs into him, starts talking to him about all the things that they're after. They're after this lens maker, and there's this dude called Redfoot, and Redfoot is somehow involved with this lens maker and some other things, and so the Red Fox starts asking around town for information about the break-in at Lord Redfoot's house. And eventually he like meets up with a dude, pays him some money, and the guy's like, "All right, I was the one who like broke in. I was hired to break into a whole bunch of buildings on that block, and take minor trinkets, but to not actually take anything from Lord Redfoot's house. And I was paid pretty well to do it." And the party's like, "Ooh, what does that mean, huh? I don't know." And they try and ask him more information. He's like, "I don't actually have anything other than that." But it was very clear that someone wanted everything to be broken into, but nothing to be taken from Redfoot's house, but to still make it look like it was messed up. And the party's like, "Oh man, what does this mean? Is it Redfoot trying to make it look like someone broke into his house, or is it someone wanted to make it look like all the houses were broken into and then wanted to like sneak into Redfoot house after?" No one's sure what's going on, but they decide to go take a look at him. They devise a plan to like spy on him and see what's going on. And as they get there, they realize that holy shit, he's left town because it's a couple days later. And so the Red Fox asks around for what's going down, and he talks to the people who are like loading this wagon with carts and chests and shit. And they're like, "Oh yeah, he's left. He's headed northward right now. And he's just gone. He's headed to Hoskar." And so the party heads out of Krabus to Hoskar. They run into him in Ordir, and this is where things get complicated. They poke around. They all go to because they ride their horses pretty hard through the day, and eventually get to Ordir late at night. And they're looking around. The party kind of rests in one spot. The Red Fox goes to look about for this dude, and he finds a wagon at this really really nice establishment in Ordir. It was Ordir, right? It wasn't Vona. Yeah, it was Ordir. Called the Silver Swan or the Sleeping Swan or the whatever. He was told it was called the Stupid Swan, but it's definitely something about a swan. And he pokes through he sees the big cart that has the carriage, and goes in the carriage and looks around and stumbles across a little secret compartment that has this long staff with an orb at the end of it. Takes it and heads back to meet with the party. They discuss it, and they take the orb out of the staff because the orb is magical and the staff is not, and go to bed. The next morning, as they're leaving their little hovel of an inn, Lord Redfoot and 6 of his bodyguards are out front. And Lord Redfoot says, "Give me the orb," or blah blah blah. And the party's like, "Fuck you, we're not gonna do it," and a fight ensues. Of course, the party doesn't say that. They're like, "What orb are you talking about? I don't know what you mean. I've never seen an orb before." And so a fight ensues. Wall of fog gets brought up, or wall of gloom. Some big wall gets created in between them that people have trouble passing through. And then there's battling, and then all of a sudden a web spell goes off, and everyone's caught in this big web, including the enemy. The web spell was cast by one of the enemy, by the way. Arcus breaks out and is running around, but he's 12 feet tall because of Anna casting I'm sorry, what's Anna's character's name? Where'd it go? Adia casting Enlarge on him, and eventually Lord Redfoot comes through and starts like stabbing the Red Fox, being like, "Give me the orb, or I will kill this little dude," and keeps stabbing him. And the party's like, "Oh, we don't know, we don't know. I don't know what you're talking about. We don't have it." And he's like, "Gah!" and starts stabbing the Red Fox. And everyone's like, "Why is he stabbing the Red Fox? We're lying to him. He should be believing us." Uh, and eventually he like knocks out the Red Fox, like KOs him. I think. Maybe not quite. I don't remember. Battle ensues. It eventually gets cleared up when Art, like 12-foot Arcus, finally gets his shit together and comes and just like cuts Lord Redfoot in half with a single blow. And they question the guardsmen. And guardsmen are like, "Dude, we were literally just hired for this job. We don't know anything about him, and we have no real loyalty to him. We were just hired as guards, and he's dead now. So we'll tell you anything you want. Just like let us go." And the party, turns out they don't have any information. The party's kind of grumpy about it, and this kid shows up out of nowhere and is like, "Ooh, ooh, ooh, what's gonna happen? What's gonna happen? Do you guys actually have the orb? What's going on?" Blah 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 blah. And starts asking them questions, and then Jen comes over and like tries to heal the Red Fox, but the healing doesn't have any effect. And like, what's going on? Our healing isn't helping him. He's still like unconscious and wounded. Oh my god. And then she's like, "Well, I'm going to cast Dispel Magic on him. Maybe there's some sort of curse on him." And all of a sudden, Lord Redfoot's body disappears. All of the wounds on the Red Fox disappears. The little kid that's nearby disappears. And like, what's going on? I don't understand this. And the Red Fox is like, "Okay," because he comes to. He like wakes up immediately. He's like, "Huh? What? I'm totally fine. I'm totally fine. What's going on?" And eventually, he pieces it together that it was all a big illusion spell that was cast, and Lord Redfoot is still out there somewhere. And the kid was probably an illusion spell, and all the wounds were an illusion spell. The guards were real. Uh-oh. And they kind of piece it together like, all right, well, that kid was probably an illusion by Lord Redfoot, which means he's still somewhere nearby, and he heard that entire conversation. Now he absolutely knows that we have all this gear. Uh-oh. There's also a moment in there where the party, before they figured out that it was illusion, they thought the Red Fox was betraying them. And they start like they start grilling him and being like, "Who are you? Why are you after us? Like, what are you doing here? How could you betray us like this?" And he's like, "Dudes, I've like literally got stabbed a bunch of times for you. I've been helping you with everything you need. What the fuck?" And eventually, once he's like, "Hey, I think this was all actually a big illusion," I'm like, "Oh, that makes more sense. Okay, I got it." Um, he's like, "Okay, I don't want to travel with you anymore. Like, you're great, you're friends and all, but seriously, this is way over my head, and I'm not ready to die for your cause. So I'm going to take these guards, and I'm going to go." And that's where we leave, with the Red Fox departing because the party almost gets him killed many times and kind of semi-betrays him. And the guards point it out too. And so the party now has this orb, but Lord Redfoot is somewhere else, on his way to Hoskar. And that's all there. So there's a lot more clues here, but that's where we end off with that week. And that is it for Misclicks. Last but not least, we have Age of Strife. And oh my god, this is like the longest weekly reroll we've ever done. So here comes the Age of Strife. Age of Strife, Season 1, Episode 2. Shannon Killer is AFK this entire season. She had a power outage that was never really fixed, so we just play without her. The party goes and talks to Lord not Gerald Silverspear, Blackburn, not Lord Blackburn, Sir Blackburn, the knight in charge of Shallot. And they meet with him and they start talking with him, like, "Well, hey, do you need some extra hands on the road? Like, it's always good to have a couple extra mercenaries." And he's like, "All right, I might be able to use you, but the halfling and the gnome in the party are being ridiculous, while the human run by Sir Scoots is like being very pleasant and very cordial and like negotiating properly." And he's like, "I guess I'll take the three of you. If you say these halfling and gnome are as good as they are, then it'll be fine." And then as he leaves, the gnome, played by Elohim, sneaks off through the house, like looking for what is it? He's looking for the amulet, because they're there looking for that ruby amulet. And he pokes around. Eventually, he like finds the master bedroom, and is poking around in the master bedroom when the wife when Sir Blackburn's wife walks into the bedroom, and there's like a gnome like digging through drawers, throwing shit, like pulling shit out and looking for stuff, and she shrieks, and the guards come, and Sir Blackburn comes, and the party comes, and everyone, it's a big clusterfuck, and then eventually it all gets sorted out, and Sir Blackburn's like, all right, you guys are gone. I never want to see my house again. No, I'm not working with you guys. You like poked around. Yes, you were looking for the shitter. That's why you were digging through drawers in my bedroom. Uh-huh. Get the fuck out of my house. You're lucky I'm not hanging you for, being a thief. So the party escapes. And they're like, well, what are we going to do? I don't know. This is kind of sketchy. Maybe we should just follow him anyway. Like, maybe he's headed southwest. Maybe we should just go southwest and we'll meet him along the way. So the party leaves before him, actually. And they head from Shallot to Abera. And when they get to Abera, they actually like see him coming by. Oh, actually, before they get to Abera, they run into a bunch of orcs on the road. They kill the orcs without too much trouble, and then they get to Abera. In Abera, they start asking about some questions. What's going on? Everyone's talking about this big wedding that's going to be happening in Thermir. And the party's like, oh, you know what? Maybe Lord Blackburn is headed to Themir for the wedding, and maybe the ruby amulet is a gift. And so they start asking questions around town. They meet up with this unscrupulous fellow who's like, hey, I know what's going on. I have details on this wedding that are not public, that are important, and that you would probably like to have, but I'm not just going to give them to you. And I don't want to sell them to you. I have a favor I need instead. I need you to go capture this guy for me. He's, involved in the murder of this dude, of this nobleman. So why don't, let me go capture him, let me talk to him, and I'll give you all the information you need. And so the party goes off to find this guy. And eventually they find him, and he's like kicked back in this scummy, scummy bar. Like, it's the sort of bar where like it's not even, there's holes in the roof, the doors are broken, the tables are broken and upturned. The guy who runs it is ugly and gross, and the whole place reeks of, rotting food and stale ale. It's like a disgusting, low down, sleazy ass bar. It's like this is possibly the worst bar that's ever been made in any world ever. I mean, probably not, but it's really bad. And they see this guy and they're like, well, how are we gonna? All right, this is our plan. This is how we're gonna get him. And so Elohim walks up to him and was like, hey baby, you wanna go for a ride? And starts flirting with him. And the guy's like, what? Huh? He's like, hey, you ever been with a gnome before? Because Elohim plays a girl. You ever been with a gnome before? I mean, this is your lucky day. And the guy's like, all right, how much you charging? And Elohim's like, 5 silver. And the guy's like, fuck yeah, 5 silver, which is like the equivalent of 50 bucks. Let's do it. And leads the gnome back to his house. The party follows at a respectful distance. And when they get back to the house, the guy like starts going for it with the little gnome who's 2.5 feet tall or whatever, maybe just shy of 3 feet tall. And Elohim's like, no, 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 baby. If you're gonna be with me, we're gonna do it my way. Get naked. I'm gonna blindfold you, not blindfold you. I'm gonna tie you up. Here's this bell. If things get out of hand, you can ring it. And there's this like heavy semi-sex scene between Elohim and this dude, which we have to role play out, which is really awkward and very uncomfortable for me. Very, very uncomfortable for me. Very, very, very uncomfortable for me. And eventually the party like breaks in. The guy's like on the ground. Bows are drawn and pointed, and he like grabs his short sword while his hands are still tied together and like stabs Elo, who doesn't die but is like badly wounded. And the party, all corners him and gets him in a position where he's like, all right, I surrender. They kick his weapons away. Jordan runs off to grab the guy that they were capturing this dude for, who shows up with Jordan, tells the party the information they need, which is the wedding at Themir with Lord Oakenshield's daughter is to the son of the Lord of Vermont, and the Lord of Vermont is the king's younger brother, also known as, what is it, Duke? I think it's Duke Ironworm. Duke Maldus Ironworm. Might not be Duke. I think it's Duke. Count. There you go. Count Meldus Ironworm. So it's like, oh shit. Okay, so this is a wedding for the king's brother's son, and no one knows it. That's like the fact that it's a secret is a big deal. And the party's still working under the assumption that Lord Blackburn is heading to this wedding with this expensive gift. Uh-oh. So they're piecing together some like, well, maybe there's like a shifting alliance. Maybe Lord Blackburn, who's an Eastern Lord, is joining with the Western Lords. We're not really sure what's going on here. And they're all kind of like, well, this is a big deal. Let's go find Lord Blackburn and see if we can, talk to him again. And so they go find the tavern, the inn where he was staying, and it turns out that he is not here anymore. He has left town already. And that's where we end the session. Actually, they patch up Ello first. There's a whole scene with a surgeon where he patches Ello up, and then they go find the inn the next day. And that's where we leave, with them standing in the middle of the street of Abera, going, maybe we should go find Lord Blackburn. He said to Themir. He's got to go by Ditchwater. Let's find out. And that's where we end that. And that is also where we end the weekly reroll for this week, guys. That's it. I will have Dicing with Death right after this. In fact, we're 20 minutes late for it. And then there is Roleplay Solem tonight. And then there's Misclicks tomorrow. And then there's Age of Strife on Saturday and HonorBound on Sunday. So it's a big week. That's it for me, guys. I will see you in a few minutes for some Dicing with Death. Bye-bye.